Recording in progress. Welcome to the Lisbon Tourism Summit 2021. I'm here at Parque da Pena, part of the beautiful Sintra Hills, and enjoying nature in autumn. The COVID-19 pandemic dramatically changed people's behavior, mobility, care of accessing spaces, forms of interaction, and the expectations and desires of each person. It is essential to empower heritage sites with the tools that allow them to face a new reality, suited to changes in the habits of the public. Betting on safety, diversity and innovation, through Parques de Sintra participation in the Journey program, it has been possible to develop a set of digital tools for all ages. Now, these resources are available from home or supporting in-person visits to monuments in a safe, didactic and more fun way. With these new tools, Sintra's parks and monuments are now closer to all and continually offer new opportunities to visit. Do not forget to visit this wonderful space. Now, it's time to head to the studio. A very exciting program with international speakers, diverse panels, innovation moments, and some surprises is waiting for you. Hello again and welcome to the Lisbon Tourism Summit 2021 from the studio. I hope you all enjoyed our little excursion this morning to Parques de Sintra. I have also brought you a piece of nature back to the studio here. Before we start with our journey today, I would like to thank the sponsor of this event, Turismo de Portugal, for making the Lisbon Tourism Summit possible. A huge thank you goes out to the partners of the journey, Grupo Barraqueiro, Parques de Sintra, Pestana, Visa and Unicre. And of course, last but not least, to the startups who have participated in the journey and will participate in this event. Box to Life, Bridgify, This Voice, Glow Social, Lucid Pay, Parsempo, PPay, Pleasance, POS 8, Shake to Win, Smart Engines, Tourmake, Turno.pt, Yellow, Proximi.io and Zoodomus. I will tell you more about the journey in a little while, but first, please welcome the President of Turismo de Portugal, Mr. Luís Araújo, to the stage for the official opening statement.
Good morning, everyone. Wonderful to be here. I'm here to tell you why is Tourism of Portugal associated with this huge event. It's wonderful. We all wanted you to be here live in Lisbon, but this is the right moment also to discuss the future of tourism and the innovation in tourism. This is the 4th edition of the Lisbon Tourism Summit, and I'm sure it will be one of the best ones because of a simple thing. We live challenging times. Tourism has been hit hard during this past year, and we believe that the only way to improve, the only way to gain a new tourism is by thinking about it and bringing innovation to the product, to a so much based product and service activity. That's why I'm here to tell you our vision. We want Portugal to be leading the innovation in the tourism sector. We want this country, and we believe this is the perfect place to develop new ideas, to test new ideas in any industry, but especially in the tourism industry. We launched a strategy 4 years ago that put sustainability at the center of this discussion. We want to grow, but we want to grow in a sustainable way, focusing on people. And by people, we mean the locals, we mean the tourists, and of course, we mean the workers of the sector. That's why it's so good to have everyone and all the startups, and I thank all the speakers and all the startups that will be discussing these new ideas during these 3 days. It's important to bring innovation and technology into our future. We've launched a program a few months ago, which means restarting tourism, building a future. And we are committed in building a better tourism in order to have a better planet. Our 6 billion euros for the next 6 years, of course, includes innovation, technology, and digital. We are committed in developing the same things that we've been developing over the past years with the program Fostering Innovation in Tourism, 1.5 million euros a year to support startups, to support new ideas, and most important, support anything that will develop the tourism in our country, but gives back some well-being to the people that live here. That's why it's so important to discuss these ideas very clearly. We believe that in a few years we will be a country with a more sustainable activity. Focusing on the goals that we have, we want 90% of our companies by 2027 with efficiency measures in waste management, energy and water, with more than 90% of the residents, especially in urban areas, happy and recognizing tourism as a positive activity for their lives. And we want more than 60% of the people that work in the sector with the secondary level. That's why we thank all those that have been supporting Portugal and our tourism sector, because we want to grow. We want to reach 27 billion euros a year. It seems too much, but we've reached a record in 2019 with 27 million guests and 19 billion euros of revenues a year. So this will be all possible with this event, with your discussion, but of course with the support of many tourism companies, from hospitality, from hotels to local lodging, from restaurants to touristic experiences, from transportation to any other activity associated with tourism. This is the time to work together, and I'm really happy that NEST, the Innovation Center for Tourism in Portugal, is also engaged on this. So I would like to thank BTI, I would like to thank the organizers, I would like to thank Mariana for her great initial speech and all the company that she's going to make during this event. But most important, thank you for the ideas and the new spirit that the tourism sector will have in Portugal for the next years. I hope to see you very, very soon, and thank you once again for all your incredible work. Thank you. Hi, Mariana.
Thank you, Mr. Luis Araújo, for your words. Before we continue, let me briefly go through today's agenda with you. Today, we will have the opportunity to listen to some ideas of business, also hear a keynote speaker about the new nomadism, and listening to a panel about big data and sustainability. Don't forget you are part of this. You can always participate with comments and questions in the Q&A section, and to participate in the debates and asking questions to the panelists. Now, it is time to introduce our first keynote speaker of the day, Rowena Hannigan. International acclaimed thought leader in the future of work and remote work skills, she is an educator, speaker and consultant. Rowena Hannigan explores the significant changes embedded into the shift to remote work, how they will impact our offices, cities, communities, and now we have to rethink leadership and tourism strategy to fit this new reality. Currently living in Zaragoza with her location-independent family, her ethos is that work is not a place, and she walks the talk. She works remotely on projects since 2007 and founded her own remote work consultancy. To quote Rowena, "Remote work has allowed me to live in many countries, travel extensively and find work-life balance. I relish being an advocate and a leader on the education and skills needed for effective remote work practices. To tell us more about the new nomads, assessing the market value, needs and considerations in the emerging sector, please welcome Rowena Hennigan. Hi Rowena, how are you? Good morning.
Good morning, Mariana. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction. It's a pleasure to be here today from Zaragoza.
Thank you. It's nice to see you again. So the stage is yours.
Thank you, Mariana. I'm looking forward to discussing and hopefully inviting all the audience today to join me in my passion as an active digital nomad. So behind me here, you've got some of my props that I brought with me today, which illustrate some of the various countries I've visited with my family over recent years. I started nomading in 2007, and at that point I was single and footloose and fancy free, and I spent a lot of time in Asia, in Bali, Malaysia and Thailand, living the cliche of a nomad, sitting on the beach in cafes and working on my computer. A lot has changed since then, and that was very much the early days. I now, as Mariana said, nomad as a family with myself, my husband and my daughter. We spent the summer in Gran Canaria, and the first mural here is from a family yoga day that we spent together and we drew. I've also got other souvenirs from Gran Canaria. We collect fridge magnets when we nomad, and I've some other bits and pieces from Thailand. So this is how important it is to me. And I invite you today to join with me both in my passion, but also in taking a moment to step back and understand the potential of digital nomadism, the emerging market for Portugal. And you as a country, the Portuguese tourism industry and all of the Portuguese have a massive advantage. I lift up another prop. This is my very special bag from Sende. Sende is the oldest rural co-living in Europe, and it is on the Portuguese-Spanish border in Galicia. I spent 3 weeks there last September finishing off a book. You also, of course, have the Madeira project, which is a leader worldwide in terms of how it has attracted digital nomads to Madeira Island, and also how it's sustaining and keeping those nomads there. So I'm going to cover off what I've promised, a little bit on the market value and assessment, some more on the needs and the considerations for nomads. But this is very personal to me. So personal that I traveled to Madeira in May of last year and spent 2 weeks there working with Startup Madeira, meeting the nomads. And yesterday when I checked in with Startup Madeira to understand how the project is going, I was blown away by some of the figures. There are between 15 to 20,000 nomad registrations and attendees on the island of Madeira. In other words, people who are traveling, in the process of traveling to Madeira to take part in the digital nomad village there. But also 4,000 of those have stayed. 4,000 of those have stayed. So approximately a third based on the original project, which started in February last year. You have a trailblazer in your midst in Portugal. Gonzalo Hall is world-renowned. He is involved in many digital nomad projects. I enjoyed fantastic conversations with him and the community on Madeira in May. And he is a prime example of a visionary in terms of how nomadism can connect with tourism. And to the next step, as Louise said, create sustainability and integrate with local communities. So let's go to a few slides, but it's mainly because I want to share some photos with you. And don't forget that afterwards as well, you can, of course, ask me questions during the one-to-one. I have to start with my home ground. I have to start with this cheesy picture of myself and my daughter and my husband at the bridge at the Ebro near the Basilica de Pilar here in Zaragoza. So today I'm in a co-working, and that's where I normally work from, in a shared location, so that I can have connection and community with other remote workers and co-workers. And that's an important point. What we're looking at when we look at the digital nomad market, segments, personas, all those things. If you want to look me up, as Mariana said, I'm a lecturer, so I'm fascinated in understanding the marketing profile, the segmentation, and those details in our markets so that we can assess market value and understand and target our market better. So I'm in my co-working today. That's me out with my family. I nomaded with my family as well a few years ago. This is on the Mekong in Vietnam. And I've showed that I have a few Vietnamese souvenirs behind. Again, we were in Bali on that trip. We've spent a lot of time in Bali. I have family in Bali. Myself and my husband have both worked as nomads from Bali, mainly from Sanur and Seminyak in Bali. Gonzalo Hall, who I've mentioned, who's created the successful Madeira project. He spent a lot of time in Bali building up his research and knowledge on nomad and the nomad market. And there we are this summer in Gran Canaria. So we've just returned from Las Palmas in early September. We spent 3 months there nomading as well, changing location and adopting our family lifestyle to that new location. That's what we do. We would be what's considered a high target in terms of our spending when we nomad. We tend to stay for 3 months, or when I travel alone at the moment, I stay for shorter periods of time. So we're going to go through some of the figures to help you understand nomads better. But I want you to keep an open mind. That's the very first thing I'm inviting you to do. I want you to take a fresh look at these nomads and maybe consider how nomads are not just these individuals who sit on a beach. They're families, they're groups of friends together. They can be co-workers. They can be of the same interest group, like artists or developers that travel together. They can be of a certain group or profile. For example, slow nomads are people who travel slowly through a region, often can have, for example, vegetarians together, surfers together, people interested in history, anthropology, whatever it may be. So take a fresh look, and we're going to have a look at the potential of the market. We're going to start to understand their needs. And again, the best way I've learned in all my years of marketing and understanding target markets is to go and take the place, walk in that person's footsteps, in their shoes, to understand what they might need. And then as we spend more time there, we can also start to consider more about, these are the things we need to investigate more. These are the things that we need more details on. As Louise said and Mariana said, this is about innovation, and remote work as a subject, as a sector, it has been always about innovation. So I'm hoping that you'll also be inspired to investigate and collaborate, that some of the names I mentioned today, the projects, from many of them from Portugal, but also in other parts of the world, will inspire you to go away and have a look and understand more about this emerging market. So there are 35 million digital nomads globally. Look at the average digital nomad income and their budget, which is a very strong D7 link with the D7 visa there in Portugal, which again is one of the most prolific in terms of length of time in the world. And we've some amazing stats coming off of the pandemic, where there are 21 countries doing initiatives and 28 projects around the world looking at these nomad markets and initiatives and programs to attract them. Very important, the majority of longer stay of nomads prefer 3 to 9 month stays. And I've said already that 4,000 plus have extended their stays on Madeira. So the Madeira Island project was looking for a minimum of 1 month, very occasionally 2 weeks, that you could go and visit Punta do Sol or Funchal. But now, even less than a year on, they have 4,000 plus people staying on the island. And also from an innovation perspective, a startup perspective, and I'm on the Slack channel for Madeira, so I know many of those nomads who are freelancers, who are business founders, who are technical developers, are innovative and entrepreneurial in their outlook. So Startup Madeira not only is getting people to stay longer and spend their well-earned money, they're also finding it's creating more growth of more startups, more innovation, more entrepreneurialism. So this is a really important point to take away for certain regions of population. For example, Lisbon or other more conurbations or urban conurbations. In terms of targeting from around the world, and this is from various research, Portugal is the top location in the EU. You have the exemplar test examples in place. I've mentioned both of them, Madeira and Sende.co. Most interestingly at the moment is Edu and Maria from Sende, which has their primary location, as I mentioned, on the Portuguese border at Galicia with Spain, is now opening a second location in Setúbal, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong for the Portuguese, just outside Lisbon. That is currently been built and expanded. Again, for some of you today, maybe it's on your doorstep, maybe you could go and visit. So fascinating within the Portuguese country itself, there's these amazing examples of innovation. The G7 visa and the potential of the average nomad is really strong. So the income, so there is a connection there that if someone comes on a short-term G7, they could look to stay for longer. So the point I'm making is that you are looking at longer-term business type travel to start with, but you are looking at people who can become high-quality residents within Portugal. They have that potential. They have that potential. They are not your standard tourist who gets on a bus and maybe goes around Lisbon, that stays for 3 or 4 days, or for example, for the duration of the Web Summit. These are in general long-term stay with a lot of appetite to stay for longer, or even to extend their stay to cover, for example, the summer or winter months. What about their needs though? And I want to make sure I've got time for Q&A. So I'm hoping that we can launch the poll now that I set up, so hopefully it's there. So I want to launch the poll to see if we can get a feel. I don't think that's the right poll, so I'm just going to see if we can get the right poll. That one says Innovation Moment Box to Life. That's the right poll. So sorry, if we can launch the poll, because I thought it would be good to stop here. I can have a drink of water. And there we go. What are the most important criteria in choosing accommodation for a digital nomad? So as I suggested, put yourself in their place, and I would love that I could see as many votes as possible coming through on that. So let's give that a minute or two to run. So let's give that a minute or two to run. That would be wonderful, and we'll see how many responses we get. And meanwhile, I'm just going to pop welcome into the chat, and I am delighted to see anyone in the one-to-ones or during Q&A. Delighted to take questions in the one-to-ones. So let's let that run. And when it's got quite a good amount, let's say hopefully 70-80% of respondents, we can publish the results before I move on to the next slide. So I'll let one of the wonderful backroom staff decide when they've got the poll, hopefully enough filled in, and then they can hopefully post the results. So we'll give that a minute to happen. And meanwhile, I'm going to move on to the next slide. So let's see what those polls said when it comes through, when it gets published. Wow, brilliant. Great to see that, and great to see so many votes. Thank you for that. So interesting. Yeah, I'm glad that you realize that if a nomad or a digital nomad can't do their work, that the location or accommodation is not suitable for them if they have no Wi-Fi connection. Very, very important. That adequate workspace or spaces is really important as well. Might be interesting to make a note on that. Depending on the profile of the segment of nomad you might go on to attract or target, you might want to look at the next one, which is very much in my case, right? So, and I mentioned myself and my husband would be included in here. As a more mature family, we need dedicated meeting and event rooms or booths for our live sessions. I did sessions like this from Galicia. I actually did some pretty important sessions for a major telecommunications company when I was there last September, October. And it's really important to have a dedicated space. Find a community, vital. If Gonzalo Hall was on here with me, if Olmide, who's driving the digital nomad community in Bali, if Jan was on from Croatia, they would all say that community is vital. Finding that community. Remember, it's longer term stays. Then it's not just okay that they meet a few of your hosts in your location, maybe your tourism experts, your guides, your reception staff. They need that connection with each other's community. And I can talk a lot on that in the one-to-one and how you can build that from before people arrive. And Madeira has done that really well. Of course, location is important. Location is always important. But Sendai, in terms of its rural location, challenges that. Sendai is very rural. It's running off a brand new fiber connection, but it had many, many problems at the start with connection. So that's an interesting one. So I don't want anyone who's joining, who's very, very rural, to feel they're totally excluded if they don't have a good internet connection. Rural is a potential going forward, and we can talk about that in the one-to-ones. Accommodation suitable for longer stays, really, really important. And also the communal spaces to connect with others. Yes, if you simply have rooms that have a workstation and you don't have anywhere for people to co-work or communally connect, it's not going to be the best. So wonderful to see those results. Thank you so much. And I'd be delighted if we could get a screen grab as well, maybe to share afterwards on social media of those results. So going back through those, it's all there. You've got the reliable internet connection. Remember, reliable for you as a writer that's maybe doing content marketing could mean one thing. Reliable to me as someone who does massive keynotes, and my husband who uploads code to large servers would not be the same thing. So you're going to really need to think about actual connection speeds there. Adequate workspaces for both individual and shared. Having that community connection, having a host, having someone maybe organizing events to gel those together. Suitable long-term accommodation with potentially suitable pricing. This comes up a lot when I speak to nomad tourism groups and infrastructure groups. You got to also think of the segment needs. So again, if you're thinking of targeting high profile, higher earning nomads, they're probably older, they may have children, they may have care responsibilities, they may have partners. They're going to have a different set of needs. Sustainability, Louise said it. I'm a big, big advocate. When I'm looking at nomad locations, one of the key things is sustainability. Sendai sources all of its local produce from the local area. It's all local source, all the food, and it's a fantastic way of integrating with the local community. And then to add that this is going to evolve. This has been completely invigorated, accelerated, and given such a rocket of action since the pandemic. And this is going to evolve really, really quickly. Within the research, you can have a look at this in your own time. I'm going to provide the deck in PDF. Here are some statistics when you want to dig down a little bit more from the website. I think it's called about a brother abroad, and you can have a look there at these different breakdowns of the personas and the different details for nomads and how you might meet their market needs. Now, I want to move on now so that I can definitely take Q&A as well to this. So what does this remind you of? I know it looks a little bit like I felt in the middle of the lockdown in Zaragoza. There's many other images out there. I want to stop for a second and contextualize the opportunity for Portugal, because this is where I think you will see market advantage. A lot of countries are reacting, just like your own D7 visa, to attracting nomads, to attracting remote workers. That we know. But you've probably had to remote work as a tourism professional at some point, or a student. You've probably felt like this person does in the picture. Tired, frustrated, with eye strain. Look at her posture. I'm not even going to comment on the ergonomics of her desk or her laptop. You can tell I'm at a standing desk because I've learned the hard way down through the years that posture is very important. So what's interesting here is when I ask you to walk in the shoes of a nomad for a minute, maybe you're saying, Rowena, I can't travel at the moment, or I don't get what you mean. I can't afford to visit a nomad location. You can imagine what it's like to remote work. Maybe a lot of you have experienced it. You know what happens when you have screen strain on your eyes, posture problems, when you're lonely and isolated where you're working from. The more you understand this, contextually, Portugal has a massive competitive advantage of attracting nomads with the right types of support, because the nomads that will arrive to Portugal will stay. Firstly, if they have the fundamentals like the internet connection, the workspace, the community. But what if that community held them and helped them in the next level? What if that community really understood the needs of remote workers? And this is where my worlds collide completely in a beautiful way, because we can experience loneliness and isolation. We do need human connection. In Sendai, I just really wanted to be out in nature. I wanted to meet with other people. Remote workers can overwork, which could lead to burnout. But what we can find from good co-working, co-living, and good accommodation is improved workspaces, supporting our stays with nutrition, events, fostering connections, simple opportunities to connect, to relax, to sit and read a book. And then if you understand us in our group, in our social connection, maybe you can help us bond with our partner, groups of friends, families, and other subgroups. Maybe we want connection with a local community because of that loneliness and isolation. In Ponta de Sol, every day at 11 o'clock, there is a coffee break, which all the nomads from the different locations in the village go to in 2 coffee shops. And also there is twice weekly a community meal. So again, I'll give you other examples of how in particular, Madeira has fostered this. So to finish up, and I'm happy to take questions, I wanted to add in this further segmentation piece and considerations. And these are the last things to add to your list as you start to consider maybe that nomad profile. And they are the facilities for longer term stays, the self-catering facilities, or maybe more self-catering that needs to be more like a hostel or shared kitchen. Connecting the community. How are you going to do that? How would you do that? Do your segment need other things like childcare, like access to local play groups or Campos de Verano, for example, in Las Canarias and Las Palmas? What events do you need to have and to connect not only your nomads together, but with your community? Startup Madeira not only did that, but they also said to the 4,000 nomads who want to stay, we'll help you stay. We'll help you with tax, with paperwork, with startup advice, etc. So how could you support your community? Is there anything else? So you're going to be sitting there listening to me and going, my community is really strong with nature, my location, with food, with all those things. So how can you bring that to a global nomad community and connect them? My last couple of messages before we go to Q&A, and hopefully you'll pop on your cameras and you'll interact so that we can get the best value out of this. Louise said as well, and Mariana, this is about innovation, collaboration, and community. I believe the last 15, 20 minutes, I've given you some fantastic examples of that, and the majority of them are out of Portugal. So Portugal, you have an amazing head start, which you need to take advantage of. And you need to look around and learn from the amazing existing projects that exist. That's me in Sendai. That's the vistas I had. We had beautiful Sintra Park. I was saying to Mariana, it reminded me, I finished a book while I was there. Stunning rural location for co-working and co-living. I invite you, I implore you to visit one of the various places. There's others around Lisbon. Setúbal is being sendai.co to find out more about Setúbal, and look at the various projects, places, and find out more about them. If any of what I've said is beginning to feel attractive to you in your existing tourism offering. There is an example of me doing my work in my shared space. There's 3 people who were sitting near me as well. And this is, again, shorter hair from last October, but a reminder of how amazing the co-living and co-working experience can be for a digital nomad. Again, I'm a couple of miles from the Portuguese border there. And finally, I would like to move to Q&A. So I'm going to shut down my shared screen so that I can come on to full view, and hopefully there are some questions that have come through either on chat.
Rowena, thank you so much for your insights and for your inspiration, I guess. So the first thing I wanted to ask is about the results in the poll. What do you think about them? Is internet the most important thing to watch when we are trying to find a spot to remote working, or as you mentioned, community is getting bigger on this process, or other things? What do you think?
I think you have to have the internet connection, Mariana. Otherwise, it's going to cause basic issues every day for a nomad trying to work. But I really like how you phrase that question, because Gonzalo, and on behalf of the rest of my peers that are working in these nomad infrastructure projects, we would talk about community workspaces. It's all as equally important. So if I only have a brilliant internet connection, but I'm sitting on my own, Mariana, in a small room, and I'm not connecting with anyone else in my nomad community, then obviously I could feel isolated. I could feel that lack of connection. So it's a really key point of what is needed to create that nomad infrastructure and community. Mm-hmm. It's as important. Also, Mariana, at the end of the day, if my back is sore because it's a terrible table and a terrible chair, then again, so it might seem like a lot to think about, but one of the things you've given me the opportunity to say is think of the power of word of mouth. And you've seen it today with my recommendations and how I've spoken about different location. This community is so connected. It is so well known to each other. Areas get recommended, locations get recommended. So any investment that you put into this will multiply in terms of the word of mouth benefit.
Mm-hmm. And what was your best experience as a digital nomad? Can you tell us?
Yes, I think the best experience, I'm going to answer in 2 ways so I don't make anyone unhappy. My best experience in terms of getting focused work done, Mariana, and getting my book finished was in Galicia, in Sendai, because the beautiful spaces that Edo and Maria have created to work from was amazing. I met community as well, but it was for my focus for those few weeks. I could go and sit and be quiet and have beautiful space that was comfortable to work. So that was fabulous from a creativity and inspiration point of view. On the other hand, Madeira, I met such amazing community. I connected with the cafe owners, the hotel people, Startup Madeira. And I really felt Madeira, in terms of creating a bigger project, was a wonderful experience of how to do that. I made so many wonderful friends. I met Kate Schiffman, who is running a wonderful project for families called Workation. There's so much wonderful innovation coming out of Madeira. So I love those two places for different reasons.
And the worst experience? What was your worst experience, if you can tell?
I can. It's going to be in a big hotel chain in Bangkok. And it actually was a 4-star hotel chain. And it was a few years ago. But I've never sat at the more uncomfortable desk in a luxury hotel where, as a small person, I couldn't adjust the seat, I couldn't adjust the back. And I remember how uncomfortable it was to work at. It was many years ago, so hopefully that has improved. But it is a lesson of how I would hesitate to book that chain to work from because of my experience of their desks.
Mm-hmm. Last question. I would like to know if you have any tips to you can suggest to create community when you arrive in a place where you don't know nothing or no one.
So I think there's a responsibility on both sides. There's a responsibility when you register or book a nomad stay, a co-living, even going to Madeira or to Sendai. They make it very clear, Mariana, that you will get the most benefit if you get involved in the community. So at the very start, when you register, they invite you to the Slack channel. They get you to read some information on events. They invite you to twice a week in Madeira, for example, there's onboarding events. Mm-hmm. They buddy people up, but also the nomad themselves has to be willing to connect and to be involved. And I think that's what I would say to nomads, but I would also say to the organizers to be aware that you have to keep trying different things, but nothing pays back more or nothing is as valuable as a good host. And anyone would say the same thing from staying in any type of lodge or B&B or hotel. If you have someone who welcomes you and is there, occasionally over your stay and says, how are you getting on? Do you need anything? How are things? That can be the gel for the connection and community because they can facilitate the community.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, I lied. I have some questions from the audience. So the first one is from João from Lisbon. He asks, as a father, I have a question on how locations should manage childcare education for profiles like yours. Should locations have a flexible education system which kids can hop on for just a few months, or should we target families that do homeschool, for example?
Wow, that's a wonderful question. And first thing I want to say is we should chat. So there is some amazing projects worldwide which are looking at flexible education, which would mean at the moment, João, I am simply nomading in the summer during the summer holidays. And my daughter, what we do is we provide Campus de Verano activities and we still homeschool because we need to. She's bilingual and we need to keep up the two languages. So there's a massive market opportunity. Myself and a couple of other people in this space are looking at flexible education where you could dip in and out of even some sort of standardized curriculum. João, that, for example, I could say I'm going to come for 4 months, take a month off school, if it was allowed, and then make sure my daughter was keeping up to her level in education. Wonderful idea. And I know there's a couple of projects in America and Australia looking at that. So please reach out directly. I'd love to talk to you about that. But in the interim, for others listening, don't be scared of connecting in with your local facilities in your area, local summer schools, local activity centres, local daycare, because that could be a way certainly to start off and attract the market. That's one way. The second way, some co-livings and co-workings are sharing location. So Kate Schiffman from Workation has got sharing location options where parents can share the childcare, or she will bring in some experts into some childcare support into the centre or location.
Mm-hmm. Another one, and this is the last one, I guess. Could you share more about the networking opportunities that digital nomads can find in co-living or co-working spaces? How is the relationship between co-livers?
Co-living is, well, you're asking someone who has travelled to nearly 70 countries. I live for travelling, for experience and meeting new people, finding out about them. So co-living, unless you're extremely shy and introverted, and I would even add that after COVID, you're probably craving connection. So come out of your shell and try a co-living. But co-living is like going to a meetup or any kind of get together, but it's much lighter. What happens is if you go to a co-living, there's normally optional events that you can get involved in. I finished my book through inspiration. I trialed 2 new service concepts safely in a safe community of co-workers last October in Senderis. And for me, it was a wonderful, supported community of like-minded people. I mean, we cooked vegetarian. I'm vegetarian. We walked in nature. We mushroom picked. We did all these things together. And lots of it wasn't work. Okay, lots of it wasn't work. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that's really important to say there as well is nomads often don't want to be talking about work 24/7. They go to disconnect. They go to be inspired by meeting other completely different people, meeting artists, meeting photographers, and meeting chefs, I met an amazing sustainability advisor when I was in Senderis, and we're still connected, a German doctor who was fascinating. So go and meet these wonderful people that will inspire you. And co-living is a fantastic opportunity for a short period of time to do that. And anyone who's attracted to it, I would say, give it a try.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Rowena, for your answers and, of course, for your inspiration. It was really nice to meet you here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana.
And about you at home, I have a question for you. Do you like interaction? So do we. So I'm gonna to explain you what's the next challenge, the LTS Quest. We are going to have a question per day for you to interact with us. So our first day question is, what Sintra Palace could you see in the beginning of the video? Do you remember the video when I was walking around the trees, all the green in Sintra, and you saw the palace? Do you know the name of the palace? I will give you some seconds to think about it and to chat. You can participate in this quiz in the Q&A, in the chat part, in Bate-Papo at Zoom. And please share what you are thinking about what you saw today, all the ideas we have shared with you already. Okay, and the palace is Palácio da Pena. So, now if you can manage 2 things at a time, you will love this next moment. Carlos Mondragon, co-founder of Box to Life, will be presenting the project. During that presentation, you will be able to select questions to Leila Costa, who will be here with me in a few minutes. As in every edition, the Lisbon Tourism Summit is hosting the Journey Demo Day. What is a Journey? It is an open innovation program led by BetaI, a global collaborative innovation consultancy where the main goal is to find innovative solutions for the tourism sector. This program gathers startups for all over the world and from numerous industries. This 4th edition was focused on addressing the highest priority challenges for the sector to boost the recovery after COVID-19 pandemic. This year we have 2 finalist startups that were selected to develop pilot projects with the corporate partners. The first one is Box to Life. In order to promote and enhance the visitor experience to Parque da Pena, Box to Life designed and implemented a pilot project with an interactive tour in the outdoors. This pilot project comprised 6 information points where visitors can access content and interact with mini-games about the spot. The visitor will get a prize after completing the tour. The pilot includes Box to Life content distribution devices that allow visitors to access the experience without the need of any internet connection. At the end of the tour, the evaluation and comments from the visitor are collected. In a pilot, the content is in Portuguese, English and Spanish languages. So make sure to participate in the poll. Don't forget to vote in the questions you would like to ask Leila from Parques de Sintra. And now, it's time for a video. Please meet Box to Life.
Hi, my name is Carlos Mondragon. The world has changed. Visitors to museums too. Arbores solves the creation and delivery of adequate and relevant content to museum visitors using a tool to publish interactive guides in their visitors' own mobiles. Right now, museums face the problem of social distancing, creation of content, to different visitor profiles that is easily distributed to them. We are targeting museum directors who want to solve this problem. Just to give you an idea, in Western Europe and North America, there are more than 500,000 sites with 1 billion visitors annually pre-pandemic. Arbores is a web platform that creates and distributes content through the internet in the visitor's own mobile. 10% of visitors to museums pay for an audio guide or similar that costs €6 in average, meaning that we are in a 600 million euros market. Our revenue stream comes from an annual subscription that goes from 2,000 to 6,000 euros a year. Competition is fierce. These are 2 global companies that are based in the UK and France, but we are better because we provide a self-service and an automated content creator tool. We are working right now in Spain, in Mexico, and soon we will be piloting in Sintra. Last year, we got investment from Lanzadera Accelerator in Spain, and last week, we got approved a project from Portugal 2020. Our plan is to pilot in Sintra this year, extend our presence to the rest of Portugal and then the rest of Europe, build a proof of concept of micropayments with Visa, and then launch to the rest of the world. We, the founders, have been working together for more than 10 years, and we are very passionate about museums. In order to promote and enhance the visitor experience to the Parque da Pena, it was proposed an interactive tour in the outdoors. This route comprises 6 information points where visitors can access content and interact with mini-games about that spot. The visitor will get a prize after completing the tour and answered the activities correctly. In the pilot, the content is in Portuguese, English, and Spanish languages. Parques de Sintra had the specific need of having location tool for the visitors, so we developed an offline map to guide them from point to point. The tool works on the visitor's mobile phone as a web app. The pilot includes our Box to Life content distribution devices that allow visitors to access the experience without the need of an internet connection. At the end of the tour, an evaluation and comments from the visitor are collected. Data about the visitor behavior and route are analyzed for decision making. A full implementation will be to install Box to Life devices with the interactive content for the rest of the Pena Park, as well as the implementation of other venues such as Monserrate Park. Arbores gives voice to museums, towns, wineries, historical sites, and monuments in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Hello, Leila. Good morning. How are you?
Thank you.
Welcome to this stage. So I was thinking about the privilege you have to work near Parques de Sintra every day. You work on sales, right?
Yes, exactly.
So what were the most or the biggest challenges in the last few years? for you?
Well, for sure, this pandemic, of course, as you mentioned in your presentation when we started, was the most challenging moment that we had at Parques Sintra so far, not only at Parques Sintra, but in the whole world, of course. For us at Parques Sintra, it meant closing down for a couple of months, and we are a public-funded company, a self-sufficient company, so we had for a couple of months no income. And now we are rebuilding and restarting and rethinking ways of making tourists coming to visit Sintra, and especially making national tourists visit Parques Sintra, visit their heritage, the built-in natural heritage that we manage there.
Mm-hmm. We have a few questions that the audience voted. One of them is, what needs would you like to see answered with the solution of Carlos?
Well, first of all, allow me to start by saying that Box to Life, Carlos and Mar were a very enriched experience to work with. We accepted the challenge of doing Box to Life and the pitch that was thrown to us at the journey because we needed to, we invest a lot in technology, and we know that technology is very important to welcome audiences and to give new experiences to the audiences. At the monuments, we do have a lot of solutions with technologies, and we wanted to bring them to the outdoors. We wanted to try to have an experience in the parks and in the gardens that would give information to the public, orientation, and also fulfills a fun way to visit and to enjoy the outdoors by having some games and some ways of interacting with the audiences. So this was the main challenge that we wanted to have fulfilled with the experience.
And what about the opportunities and the difficulties did you identify during the pilot, in the program?
The main difficulty that we had, not really a difficulty, but a challenge, exactly, an opportunity for Parques Sintra and also for Box to Life is to adapt the solution to the outdoors. This solution, as it was presented to us, was thought to the inside, and it exists already in some museums, as Carlos mentioned earlier, in the indoors. So we had to adapt it to the outdoor. So we had to overcome some challenges as GPS guidance, and this was also an opportunity for Box to Life to enhance the solution and the proposal that they started by pitching us.
Okay. And how has been the experience to work with Box to Life?
As I said earlier, it was a great experience. Carlos and Mar are very available, very down to earth, and they really outdo themselves, them and their team, to give solutions to all the questions and to all the needs that were presented by Parques Sintra throughout the project. And it's great when you have such an available team and such an available company to work with. So it has been a great experience so far.
The last questions. How do we see Pena Quest growing in the future?
Well, if everything goes along as expected, we can have more visitors doing the experience, visiting the parks, and then we see other tours. We built this experience for a small tour in Parque de Pena, and then we can do it. We have 80 hectares at Parque de Pena, so we can have different quests along the park. And also we thought about integrating the experience in our own services as our educational services offers. So and also not only at the Park and National Palace of Pena, but also at the Montserrat Park and Garden and at the Queluz National Palace and Garden. So a lot of ways that we see it growing in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Leila, so much for your
pleasure,
insights.
My pleasure.
So the moment has come now for the ones of you who have managed to obtain our special tickets to meet today's keynote speaker, Rowena Hannigan, in the exclusive session with only a small group of people. Now, join the link that we have shared with you in order to enter the Zoom meeting, where you will be able to interact and learn more about the digital nomadism is all about. In the meantime, our main stage will go on a 20-minute break. Grab a coffee, relax your eyes, stretch, and we will be back soon to the Innovation Sparks and a fantastic panel. See you in a while. are back in the studio to tell you more about innovation in tourism. How was your break? How was your session with Rowena for those who have the opportunity to talk to her and to ask her questions personally? We are now ready to introduce you our next moment, Spark Startups. Today we are going to meet two startups, Shake to Win and Zodomos. While we share their videos, you will be invited to give them feedback on their presentations. Stay tuned, please.
Shake to Win is not just a travel app. It is a culture preservation platform that focuses on free independent travelers from China to explore cultural spots around the globe. First, and before their trip, they connect with each one of the spots by identifying content in their language and in a mobile format. Then, during their trips, Chinese users can explore the different spots by the geofence technology that drive them to each one of the different locations and spots while connecting with the information shown about the different services and products. Last but not least, conversion. Shake to Win supports payment integration within their platform, allowing users to even convert and buy even after the trips. That's how Shake to Win has now presence in South Africa, Europe, and Latin America, and growing the market and growing the spots around the globe that allow everyone to invite the Chinese user to come inside. Welcome and enjoy Shake to Win. China represents the biggest outbound tourism market in the world, and when it comes for local vendors in the West, it's very hard for them to engage with this audience because it's so expensive and demands a lot of knowledge in terms of digital spectrum to engage with this user. That's why Shake to Win simplifies this process, allowing them to integrate their payments and to list their products and provide visibility to their brands in China in seconds, without knowing the language and without needing to invest a lot of money in order to engage with this consumer. This is the way how we rescue culture, because we focus on those cultural value spots that many times have been left behind. But with our brand and with our solution, they can now access the biggest market in the world when it comes for tourism. That's why Shake to Win is committed to leave no one behind, and that's why we are now engaging more than ever before on the post-pandemic market and the post-pandemic era of tourism to engage with cultural spots and rural areas across the world, enable them to unlock the opportunity to connect with the Chinese market.
Hi, my name is Manuel Costa and I'm the founder of Zodomos. Zodomos is a channel managed API that allows software developers to connect to booking channels like Booking, Expedia or Airbnb. Startups and small companies do not have access to Booking or Airbnb directly. In Zodomos, we provide easy and fast access to the booking channels via an API. We are doing what Stripe did for the banking market, allowing small players to easy onboarding. At the moment, we are connected with Booking, Expedia and Airbnb, but more channels are coming. Our business model is a software as a service with a monthly subscription. Zodomos is a Portuguese company selling to 13 countries like the Czech Republic, Italy, Spain, UK, Netherlands, Norway, Austria, Romania, Albania, Serbia, Malta and Portugal, but we have leads in more than 50 countries. Thank you.
These were our very first two startups. Following up, we have our very first panel of LTS. The panel will deal with the topic Big Data and Sustainability, New Drivers of Destination Marketing. You can ask questions, of course, in our Q&A section, and there will be time at the end of the panel to answer them. So the panel will be moderated by André Forte, Media Relations at Startup Portugal. Over to you, André. Hello, good morning. How are you?
Hello, Mariana. How are you?
Hola. How are you? I'm good. So the stage is yours. You can introduce your guests and start the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you to Lisbon Tourism Summit for inviting me and for having me, and thank you, Mariana, for your kind introduction, as always. I would like to call on stage to join me Leticia Elia, Head of Business Development and Board Member at Switzerland Tourism, Carlos Sendra, Sales and Marketing Director at Mabrian, Diego Acunha, UK Country Manager at Datapil, and Alba La Justicia from the Observatory of Tourism of Barcelona. Hey, everyone. Hope you're all feeling fine, and I hope I did not butcher your names or mispronounce them. I really tried my best. Because we have not enough time to actually dive deep into this as I would love to, because I believe this is a really important subject. I will just ask you some really short questions and we'll move forward like that. And yeah, let's keep it short and sweet as we all love it. So maybe Diego, I will start with you, if that's okay, because okay. I'm curious about how do you define big data when you're looking into tourism? How would you define it, and what's important to tourism in big data?
Well, thanks, André, for the invitation. And yeah, I think it's a very good question. I think we keep on hearing big data everywhere. I think what is relevant to tourism is effectively the idea is that the name says it all, is big data, and you're trying to deal with a lot of information coming from several sources. And the idea is to try to narrow that down as much as possible to make some meaning out of it, basically. So trying to narrow down all those different sources, all those different touch points, and bring it down to something that is more consumable for somebody that is actually wanting to make decisions based on data. And in terms of tourism, I think big data in all aspects, but effectively, I think the key to it is understanding from a destination point of view, is understanding how to position your destination, understanding what people are saying about your destination, understanding how people are behaving, what policies you should enforce, how to attract people from different markets. Of course, tourists from the UK visiting Portugal might not be asking the same questions as somebody coming from Italy. So I think it's important to sort of narrow that big data down to something consumable, and then something that is consumable and applicable to all the different source markets as well.
Thank you. And now I would go straight to Carlos, actually, because I'm curious on how we define sustainability. I know that Mabrian is currently working on defining or supporting better decisions in terms of sustainability. So I believe this is the big elephant in the room, because sustainability actually means a lot of different things. When it comes to tourism, Carlos, how would you define sustainability?
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Andre. Well, that's a great question as well. I mean, it's very heterogeneous, the term of sustainability, as you just mentioned. For me, it's a balance. Basically, it's a balance in between the economic development, the human well-being, and last but not least, the environment protection, right? Preservation of the environment. But that must be all three at the same level, since the most of the times I feel like we forget about the importance of that the tourism sector must be efficient and sustainable in terms of business and economics, since if it's not sustainable at that level, it won't be, right? And so that would be pretty much not generating any type of damage to the environment, but it won't be, and that would cause a lot of inefficiencies in terms of the economy and the well-being of the residents and the humans.
Well, thank you, Carlos. And now moving forward to Alba. Alba, I'm curious, since the Observatory of Justice is looking so closely into what's happening in Barcelona at this point, are any indicators that you get from your work that allows you to assess how sustainable can actually a destination be? I believe that Carlos actually raised some really important questions. Not only economic sustainability is really important, but it should be in balance with environmental sustainability at the same point. And well, I believe this goes for Lisbon as well. When we talk about sustainability, mobility is a huge problem, and we are in the end of Europe per se. But how do you, looking at the data that you have available, how would you define this balance, and what's your thoughts on it?
Thank you, and good morning to everybody. First of all, if we are talking specifically in mobility, tourism, and sustainability, we have 2 points of view as well. It's the mobility to reach to the place, but also the mobility within the city or within the destination, which is really important to address sustainability. So from our point of view, we're really keen on checking which mean of transport tourists are using while they are in the city, and trying to promote or trying to manage those, for instance, trying to focus more on mobility, not public transportation, or for instance, going on foot by bike, or habilitating this path to people feel more comfortable to use more maybe sustainability from this point of view, or trying to address from how people reach the city. There's wider range, for instance, trying to trains or trying other means of transport that it's hard for us. For instance, Barcelona, Lisbon, we are not as well connected as many other more Central Europe cities. But for sure, it's more wider on this perspective if we focus just on mobility. But for sure, sustainability has the other aspect that just Carlos mentioned.
Thank you. Now, Leticia, this is your turn. I'm curious about the sustainable brand and what it really means at this point. In branding wise, I believe it's really clever, so I'm really excited about it. But I'm more curious to know, what is Switzerland doing to become actually a sustainable destination?
Thank you very much. Good morning from my side as well. Actually, with sustainable, for us, it is important to launch an initiative within the whole touristic industry in Switzerland. So it's not only a marketing campaign created by Switzerland Tourism, but the idea is really to give every supplier within the tourism industry the possibility to join. So it's like divided in different steps. We do have one side which is really motivating the touristic partners to join, to start with their journey to become more sustainable. And then on the other hand, we as Switzerland Tourism, we create a campaign, a communication campaign, where we communicate this branding, but as well all our efforts to customers. Because what we noticed so far is that Switzerland is doing a lot since ever, actually, within sustainability, but we didn't really position ourselves as sustainable travel destination. And this is something that we want to change in the future. And also from our side, we see sustainability as actually something that covers all 3 dimensions. So the economic, the social, and the ecologic aspect.
Thank you. Now, I believe it's better that I just open up the questions to everybody on the panel. So please feel free to jump in. If you don't, I will probably call you in. But I would say that, given what you just shared with us, that sustainability is defined by making better decisions, obviously, both on the consumer side and on the business side. Do you believe there's actually now a demand on the consumer side that will drive destinations to move into this direction? I know that you're really excited and you're really nodding at this point. Leticia, do you want to jump in?
I can do that. Yes, I think we analyze different data on the behavior as well of customers, and I think what is clearly, or what can be seen clearly, is that it is not a niche topic anymore. It's something that became a mainstream now, and that customers really demand as well. And I think sometimes we need to see that it's also, I mean, being sustainable doesn't mean not to travel anymore. It does just mean to pay more attention, to be more conscious, and in that we can help our tourists as well in the future. So I really think something changed, and the pandemic even reinforced this trend, in my opinion. Yeah.
I would add, Andre, if again, that it's a matter not only for the travelers, but also for the sector, for companies and organizations, since the entities are also more conscious about the need of being sustainable. It's a matter of survival. We have to move from the concept of marketing in terms of talking about sustainability into start doing things, since it's a matter of survival for the sector, right? In mid long term, if we don't do anything to move this sector into something sustainable, it's gonna drop. It's gonna die. I mean, it's a matter of taking this rolling, I think.
Yeah, and if I may add to that one, Andre, as well, is I think, as Leticia was rightly saying, is also the customer perception, which is what we look into, and the customer perception is. For Switzerland or for Nordic countries in general, they wouldn't have had to say, "Oh, we're a sustainable destination." They always basically predicated that with facts and with the way they go about it and the way they promote themselves and the way they always conducted themselves in terms of tourism. So I think, in my view, they're going to be, if you want to call it the big winners in terms of being more prepared to deal with this influx of other destinations now claiming to be sustainable, when in fact these other destinations can actually sit down and say, well, we told you this 30, 40 years ago. And they come in late into the game as well. So I think from a customer perception point of view, I think customers are very, very clever. They're going to be able to see what's happening, and they're going to be able to see who is actually using it just for marketing purposes, or who's actually truly taking this on board and making the changes that they need to make.
Yeah, which brings me, I mean, we're already talking about data at this point, so I believe that we need to address that other elephant in the room. In your opinion, I know your opinion, but I'm curious to know a little bit more, because this is a little bit of a biased question. But should big data be the driving force for sustainable tourism? How do you look at it?
I mean, I'm not partial with that. I mean, first, I'm partial because I do think it must be driven by data. What we really didn't pay attention to is that some data we already have, but we really didn't take into account that this is a sustainability data. And what we have to do sometimes is make this awareness, and realize that what we were thinking maybe 10 years ago, that we were, what citizens are thinking about the city and how it's behaving the tourism, that we will link with sustainability is for sure one of the key points of social sustainability.
I would add that data, in my opinion, data it's a tool. Big data, it's a tool to observe. So being able to observe the context at the real time, and we need somehow to measure what's happening, right? And data can help us to do this. So possibly big data can be one of the drivers in order to measure and track if sustainability goals are on the track or not.
And also, I think if I can add, it can be also a way of influence travelers as well. I think about to guide them. I mean, we didn't talk about over tourism for 2 years now because we just didn't have any tourism, but it will come back, and we are all happy that it will come back. But data can help us as well to help customers to choose the right time, not to create too many crowds. And I think all these advantages that the technology and data offers us, we just need to find the good ways on using them in order that it can help us in becoming more sustainable.
And I think, Andrew, if I may add to what has been said already, of course, I'm a bit partial, so I'll try to stay a bit more impartial about this in terms of the usage of big data for sustainability. But you always have to have a starting point in terms of measuring something, because basically you have to decide how you're going to measure it and what you're going to measure. So just to give you an idea, and just for the audience to know, we basically decided to go by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, because we thought, right, everyone understands that that's what we're aiming towards in 2030. That's where the world is saying that it's going. So from our side, we said, right, okay, let's see out of those Sustainable Development Goals, how many of those can we measure, and then how we can apply that to tourism. So as Alba was saying, and Letizia was saying in particular, and Carlos was alluding to before, is in terms of not just the environmental side of things, which is absolutely fine, but it's just one of the pillars. But then economically, how are those measures going to affect the people who visit and live in those destinations? Then from a society point of view, are they engaging with local business owners? Are they dispersing in the country the way they should be dispersing and sustainably? And then from a governance point of view, is to basically see if governments are actually adhering to what they say they will be doing. And then if the perception of people is that the governments are doing the right thing. So I think that's how big data can actually do, is to actually keep everyone in check, and just to make sure that we all doing what we say we're going to be doing.
Well, thank you, Diego. Actually, you touched an important point, because usually we focus too much, or maybe not too much, but we focus too often on the consumer behavior. But there's other indicators that should be pointed out when we talk about big data. And besides that go besides the consumer, how we behave as consumers. I'm curious about how can big data actually influence governments to drive their destinations towards a more sustainable goal, and talking about the 3 pillars that we've been mentioning. I'm curious about it. Alba, maybe throwing you under the bus here, but since you are working, sorry to interrupt you.
Diego was about to save me, so I don't mind if he wants to keep speaking.
Yeah, don't worry. If I would, I'll try to save Alba from the bus. Basically, I think, Andre, that's a very good point. And actually, just to link it to what we were saying before, I think some of the other things that we can look at is, as Alba was mentioning, it's actually potentially data that you already have within your organization that you are not precisely looking at it from a sustainability point of view, thinking about environmental credentials, that sort of thing. One of the things that we started doing, for example, that can help governments enforce these things that we're saying, is actually looking at open source data sort of thing. So you can look at systems like Copernicus from the European Union with satellite imagery, and that can actually, everyone has access to that in terms of being able to see the deterioration of certain aspects of deserts or cities and how things are changing. So you can access that sort of thing. The European Environmental Agency will use the data as well, and that's an open source data as well. So it's not that you have to look too far or you have to reinvent the wheel. I think just, again, using what the organisms in terms of international organizations that have already decided what sustainability is and how they're going to measure it, well, we can enforce it with the same tools, basically.
Yeah, sure. And just for an example, if we want to focus more and linking with my previous, where I was talking before, mobility. Big data and mobility can help us to manage flows, citizens' flows, and you can for sure see if there's, as we said, over tourism that Leticia was mentioning before, where people are connecting which type of hours with moments, this flow that maybe can help us to make some strategic decisions, such as, for instance, move on a station of bus, or trying to change the paths, the schedules of any other stuff, can help management for cities and for cities or governments to create. You don't need to maybe think in huge changes, but maybe small changes that with data that can impact hugely on a daily basis.
I think this is going to be very important because you do have big players in tourism that will exactly focus on this. I mean, if you look at Google Booking, for instance, they already announced that they will give priority to partners, to hotels, to suppliers that are active in sustainability, and they will measure this by data as well. They will not. It's not going to be a feeling of booking on which hotel is sustainable or not. So I think this is a very important starting point, because we all know how much influence they do have in guest decisions.
And this brings me to another thing that I'm curious about, which is the efficiency part. We all obviously been talking a little bit about this, but we tend to forget that tourism impacts all of our lives, right? So when I live in a big tourist destination, obviously the way I relate with tourists, or that I live in the same context as they are traveling, obviously influences my life, and I will have an influence on their life. And I'm curious, what indicators are there that we are looking for to highlight this type of relation? Albert just mentioned some of them in regards to mobility, but seasonality would be important. I'm curious to look at where can we actually tap into to make things more efficient for everyone. Carlos, do you want to go now?
Yep. Yeah, from our side, what we're trying to do is to provide the sector with indices, indicators that can measure this type of impact and efficiencies for the destination, and also regarding the sustainability. For instance, Diego was mentioning the redistribution of the incomings, the tourist incomings among the local economies. This is something that can be tracked nowadays by the spending data, right? In our case, we have an agreement with MasterCard globally, so we can track how much are the visitors is spending and how they are spending, right? If the local economies has an impact on that incomings or not. Other indicators like seasonality you just mentioned, it's key as well, or indicators as the dependence of a destination in terms of long haul origins or not, right? Which is something that can be subjective as well, because that would depend. I mean, that's a clear example, right? Is a destination more sustainable if depend on long haul origins or not? That would depend on if that long haul visitors are staying longer or not. I mean, it's more sustainable one trip for staying 20 days from the other part of the world, or 3 different trips domestically, right? So that's the type of questions that is not easy to answer. This is a way that which is moving forward, and it's creating criteria as we move. But the thing again is to start to tracking and measuring this kind of things. And other important thing that Leticia mentioned is the perception of the visitor in terms of sustainability, right? And Diego also knows really well how to study that. This is a matter of how the potential travelers perceive a destination. It's not, in fact, a matter of if that destination is sustainable or not. It's much more a matter of image of that destination. Sometimes destinations are doing really well in terms of moving things to be more sustainable, but the communication must be improved in order to be connecting with that potential travelers. And Google, Booking, and these big players are pushing hard in order to make that happen fast.
And this comes to another question, which is the marketing part. Obviously, the perception that we have of the sustainable tourism sector, but also destinations, which are the more sustainable or not. And yeah, I'm curious to know, how can smaller players, in your opinion, leverage the available resources to position themselves in this, up and coming sector? Diego, do you want to go?
Yeah, of course. I think it's also related to what Carlos was saying before, is understanding, you can use the data for several things. One is, particularly with marketing, is you can understand the different source of that traffic into your destination. And then if all different types of travelers do similar things or they do other stuff as well. So effectively, what you could do is you can adjust your marketing accordingly. And what that makes sense, what that allows you to do, particularly if you're a smaller destination, is that if you've got very tight marketing budgets, rather than you thinking about what they call the machine gun approach, just basically getting the machine gun and just sending everything that you can to everyone and just promoting, let's say, Switzerland in exactly the same way to the American tourist or the German tourist or the Spanish tourist or whatever it is, just basically do a bit of research based on data and then understand, right, okay, so American tourists travel during this particular, in majority travel during this particular period, and they come to my destination because they like the food and beverage offering. Perfect. So my messaging to American tourists should be food and beverage offering during this time, and promote that. And then you promote the other things to the other markets. So effectively in that way, even with a tight marketing budget, you could be more accurate in the way you're portraying the message. So I think even with smaller destinations, it's not something that that can't be done. I think it's actually it's like any entity. You need to understand your customers better, and you only start understanding your customer better with either your own data or outsourced data or a combination of both.
But I think it's important as well to be consistent then. I mean, to really stick to your strategy and to make sure that, if you're a destination and then you create maybe a communication campaign or you address some segments, that your suppliers within the destinations, they follow you as well. And I think this is being sustainable. It's really about the cooperation of the whole destination, or in our case, the whole touristic country. So I think this is very important. Don't go just on yourself and create something, but make sure that everyone in your destination is on board as well.
Thank you. Now I would go to the most philosophical part of the debate, if that's okay with you. I'm curious to know, how affordable is it to be sustainable for consumers and both for the business side and for the governmental side? Because I noticed that usually sustainability is linked to a notion of better quality, which translates to higher prices. So is it really affordable to be sustainable? Is it really only available for some types of consumers? How are you looking into that? And are you looking to make it more affordable in the case of Switzerland and Barcelona? I'm curious to know. So I don't know who wants to start. This is a really broad question. So maybe Alba, you want to go first?
Okay.
If you don't want to go,
I will try to answer the question. But actually, I do think we're link something that is better or more quality to higher price is something that we tend to do, but we should not, maybe. And I think sometimes it's a misconception that it must be expensive, more expensive to be sustainable. And sometimes it's not. Because, for instance, I go back to the same topic, mobility. If you go on foot, it's cheaper than taking the public transportation, and it's more sustainable. For sure, if you spend more days, longer stays, you take more advantage on the price of the ticketing to arrive to the place. So sometimes what we need to see is actually if what we are paying in this case, it's worth what we are consuming in that perspective sometimes. So although it's could be sometimes to tend to be more expensive, I don't think it's affordable for everybody, because everybody can be. It could be harder in the future. Some of the prices, for instance, ticketing, if every consumer petrol and that stuff. But for sure, we have to readapt to our own context, and it's for sure you can do it. Small tips, you can do it at home as well. I mean, it's not just linked to tourism, sustainability. You can do it at your home, although you have high budget or low. But it's really a personal point of view.
Leticia, do you want to go next, or Diego? Yeah. I just noticed that you unmuted.
No, please, Leticia, go ahead.
Well, I think neither. I mean, it's not only a matter of price. I think also for supplier, I'm taking a little bit the supplier side as well. I think you can even, I mean, sustainability, it's on a private level, but on a business level, it's all about little steps as well. And they don't have to cost that much. And I think you just need to be conscious. But for instance, I'm thinking about a hotel. If you try to, for instance, have less food waste, it is very sustainable. And at the end of the day, it's also cheaper and you can offer better pricings. As Alba mentioned, think about the mobility aspects as well. So I really think it's being sustainable. It's about many little steps, and it don't have to cost that much. I think it's really the global approach that counts then at the end.
Yeah, sorry, Andrea, and I was going to allude to what Alba and Leticia said. I think potentially you could argue that sustainability at the moment is a bit of a buzzword. But if you think about it, like anything that was perceived to be expensive to start with, you can start with electric cars, for example. They were perceived as something luxurious, something that only very rich people could reach. But then there's several governments, including the UK, that they already pass a law that says that you're not going to be able to buy anything by electric from the year 2030. So the reality is, whether we like it or not, we are heading that way. So potentially we go back to perception. The perception could be that it's actually something very expensive. But as Leticia rightly said, it's not. And it's actually, you're going to have to go that way whether you like it or not. Because, for example, as Leticia rightly said with a hotel, for example, if you're a hotel and you actually think that your marketing strategy is going to be effective because you advertise that you've got food wastage, I don't think that's going to work for you. So basically, if you advertise the fact that, look, you try to minimize food wastage, that you pay your employees what you're meant to be paying them, that you don't discriminate in terms of gender and so forth, because that's also part of sustainability according to the United Nations as well. So I think hopefully, again, we're being philosophical here. I would like to think that that's where we're heading. Of course, in other places, it's going to be quicker than others, but I think people are slowly realizing that there's no other option anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you, Diego. There is another option, and again, considering the fact of it's about necessity, right? It's not only about the tourism; it's about the earth. Even if it's less affordable, we have to interiorize. I mean, we all travelers that probably it can be differences. Hopefully, not that much. I mean, not that much expensive, but it could happen. We have examples here in Spain. I live in the Balearic Islands and Barcelona as well. They have taxes. They used to have taxes for sustainability of the destination, right? Well, that's a matter of sometimes regulation. And as much as we can have it normalized in all destinations, the traveler is gonna interiorize all this and make that like something natural, right? And so the key here is that we see the return on that. I mean, the most of the travelers don't care about paying a little more for their vacations, but it's about seeing the return on that, on the environment, on the destination, right? On the well-being. That's the thing.
Thank you. Now, I'm curious. Obviously, we cannot talk about tourism in 2021 without mentioning the COVID pandemic that happened last year and is still ongoing. Are there any specific trends that have risen from the pandemic? In Portugal, for instance, which is my inspiration for this question, we noticed that there was a trend of people inside Portugal doing tourism inside Portugal, so nationwide tourism. Are there any other specific trends that have risen, and do you believe that they will stick around for long? Are we on track for a new normal, or the old normal will return?
Just another trend that some people may as mentioned as well as people has moved to work to other destinations. The digital nomads have increased a little bit. It was really noticeable at the beginning of the year in 2021. It's true that it has decreased a little bit, at least here in Barcelona area, but not to the city itself, but to small towns nearby or small places that people are now, this new mobility of mixing, and people don't think they are going to work, but it's more like going to have a week of pleasure and having some tourism as well, taking the advantage in the morning at work, and in the afternoon I would go to some tourism. I think it's a trend that if remote working sticks around, it could be kicking off and starting to be more common. But if it's come back to a more standardized way of thinking of working from the place of work, for sure it will disappear, or unless it doesn't have this huge impact that it has at the beginning of the year. But I think it's a new trend that it could be possible to be stick around a little bit more.
I think as well, definitely workation is an important trend that will probably stay, and there's a big potential for the tourism industry. I think what you mentioned, Andre, as well is, I mean, people discovered their country again, so they discovered close places. I think this will stay, but still people will want to travel again as well into other destinations. I think there will be probably a combination of both, of doing trips, very conscious trips in the own country or just close by. And then on the other hand, I think people will travel. They will travel far as well, but probably they will reduce the amount of travels. They will stay longer, which is something that I think destinations should promote as well, to really motivate people to get deeper, closer into destinations, stay longer, and on the other hand, discover their own places as well. I think this will stay.
Well, I think, Andre, if I may, from my side, is agreeing quite a fair bit with Alba and Leticia. I think in terms of trends, I mean, it's interesting because if you look at the US market, the US market has always relied on a very, very strong domestic market rather than international traffic. So I think particularly depending on how you look at it. So if you look at it from a European point of view, I think even with myself being in an island and then now not being part of the European Union, but let's not even go there. I think it's basically, I think as Europeans, we're spoiled for choice in terms of the fact that we could be in an hour or 2 hours in a complete different destination that is very, very different to where we live. Whereas, again, in the case of the US, domestic travel has always been something that has been very strong. So I think that will stay. I agree with what Leticia and Alba said, but also I think that it sort of opened up a market, because sometimes what you need to think is that not everyone has access to traveling, of course, because they don't have the means. So I think what's been really interesting in the case of, I know for a fact because I've got family in Italy, so the Italian market or the Italian government giving incentives to the citizens to actually travel around Italy, for example. And I know, excuse me, other countries have followed suit. And I think that has opened up a bigger market to people that potentially wouldn't have traveled before. And then I hope that's going to do is they're going to catch the travel bag that I think most of us have in the room and then that is going to create a certain different type of demand. So one of the trends that we've seen, for example, just to briefly mention that, is that we've seen a lot more demand for campsites. So we've seen a lot more people camping because they didn't want to stay in hotels, or they didn't want to stay in cities, and a lot more people just potentially maybe doing it less sustainably, but driving more rather than getting on public transport, and then basically just going on road trips, because that was the only thing that they were allowed to do, just to get on the car and drive somewhere. Maybe not even stopping, just go for a meal in a stop somewhere. And we've seen that as a trend. So I think I think that is likely to stay, as Leticia and Alba said, in a bigger or lesser fashion, but I think it's there to stay.
Yeah, I'm agree with that. Part of these trends are definitely to stay. In our case, we made a pretty interesting study during this summer about the domestic tourist trends in UK. Since obviously it's been much more domestic during 20 and 21, since it was kind of hard getting out and expensive due to all the restrictions and all the things you have to do, right, to be back to UK. And what we observed is that the experience of the Brits when staying at their own country on vacation was really good, was really high, and was improving from the 19, right? And that's something interesting because, as Leticia mentioned, a lot of Brits were discovering its own country for the first time during summertime, right? And that's interesting. And we saw how interests like active, like family activities, etc., were going up. And probably the trend of making less international trips and a combination in between domestic traveling and international traveling, it's a trend to be aware of, because probably it's going to stay.
Well, thank you. I believe that we have time for one more question, and I'll make it a little bit broad, but I'm curious to know what's your opinion on it. In your opinion, what would be the biggest challenges in the sustainable tourism sector at the moment? Maybe we'll start alphabetically to make it easier. Alba, you want to go?
Challenges. Well, I think a huge challenge that we have, that I think we are trying to address quite hard, is what we talked about before, awareness. The idea that sustainability is to stay, and we have to be it has to be in our roadmap as a consumer and as well as stakeholders. It must be on our DNA and in our way of perceiving it. And as we consume, or as we promote, or as we manage, it will be a key part of it. And although it seems quite topic, I do think it was rather difficult to say, but once you are, right now it's like impossible to skip. And it is the challenge that everybody stays on the same page and try to arrive to what at the beginning was said, to try to balance everything. I think it was Carlos who was talking about balance. I think it's coming back to that keyword as for the future.
Carlos, you want to go now to keep the alphabetical order?
I would summarize the global challenge by moving from good intentions to doing things, right? And from the top. We've seen lately in Glasgow, the G20, in Rome as well, a lot of good intentions during the last years, during this year, but things have to move, have to start rolling and moving forward, since the time is running out. It's not just a matter of tourism, it's a matter of a global challenge. So yeah, from good intentions to actions, I would say.
Diego, you want to go?
Yeah, I think very similar to what Carlos said. I couldn't agree more. I was going to mention the role that governments play, but particularly more around the information that they provide or lack of. I think us all involved in the travel industry, I'll just include all of us, we're a very easy industry to penalize, because it's very visible in terms of people getting on a plane and thousands of people going through airports and moving around cities and things like that and going from one place to the other. But the reality is whenever you go on data, which is what we are alluding to, whenever you go on data, you will find that emissions from planes are not the biggest contributor, and it's actually other bigger contributors that governments don't want to acknowledge because it's actually a much more difficult conversation to have. So it's very easy to say, right, we need to stop over tourism or we need to impose taxes on flights and things like that. The reality is I don't think that's going to stop. I think that's going to allow people are still going to travel. They might do it more sustainably. They might do it by train or whatever else that they can do. But I think a lot of it has to start with the rhetoric from governments in terms of potentially just branding, as part of Leticia was mentioning as well. It's just saying that all tourism is bad. It's actually on the contrary, and you've seen it during the pandemic that the amount of numbers of people that lost their jobs and livelihoods and the devastating effect that it had to so many economies, particularly those very heavily reliant on tourism. So I think, as Carlos mentioned, I think government is going to play a huge part.
Last but not least, Leticia.
Thank you, Andre. Well, I think as well that we need to make sustainability tangible. I mean, it's it's a description of something that has so many dimensions, so many elements, and we need to help our travelers to understand what sustainable experiences are. And this, we don't do it by just communicating restrictions, but we need to communicate the enrichment actually that sustainable travel offers. And this is what we try to do with Swisstainable by giving it another name and filling it with content actually. So really showing people what things can you do in our country, in our destination that are sustainable, and showing them that it is not a limitation or not always expensive, but it is all about having a greater, nicer experience. And this is a challenge, but I think, it's something we definitely need to face in order to make the tourism industry a more sustainable industry.
Thank you. Thank you, Alba, Carlos, Diego, Leticia, for your opinions and for your insights. I believe it was a really interesting conversation. I do know that I learned a lot, so thank you for that. And I believe that's all on our side. So back to you, Mariana, for the closing remarks.
Thank you, Andrea, so much for this interesting panel. So now it's time to say goodbye, but don't cry yet. Before that, let me tell you about the Lisbon Tourism Summit LinkedIn group. You can go there, see what's up, talking to people, networking, and so on. It's simple. Just follow the link at the chat section. After visiting Sintra, learning about nomadism and discussing big data and sustainability, it is time to go. It's time for you to recover for such empowering and inspirational day and prepare yourself for tomorrow, day 2. We're going to have amazing guests. Entrepreneurs talking about their startups, speakers unlocking artificial intelligence, and of course, some surprises. That's a wrap for now. I hope you can meet again tomorrow. See you then.